inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States with Kurt Schlichter, the author of The Attack, Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, and Carol Markowitz, the host of The Carol Markowitz Show. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand by subscribing on Apple or Spotify. Terrestrial radio across this great United States of America, and always live at 12 o'clock Eastern Time every Monday through Thursday from now into the indefinite future at Fox News YouTube, Fox News Facebook, and foxnews.com. Tomorrow is the launch of the Will Cain Show at 4 p.m. on the Fox News channel. You can now be with us twice a day, every day, right here at Fox News. As we speak, Donald Trump is in the process of inauguration as the 47th president of the United States. J.D. Vance has just been sworn in as the vice president of the United States. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, let's take a listen and watch as Donald Trump is sworn in as President of the United States.
Execute
the office of President of the United States.
the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability,
And will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Chief Justice John Roberts swearing in Donald Trump as the 47th president. Handshakes exchanged with now former President Joe Biden. A 21-gun salute outside of the Capitol. The rotunda today, where Donald Trump has been sworn in as President of the United States, filled with cabinet members and notable influencers within this next presidency. In the crowd, of course, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Dana White, Miriam Adelson, and then Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, Sundar Pichai of Google, and Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Represents quite a moment in the history of America. A comeback for the President of the United States. A complete revolution. Perhaps a revolution of common sense. That's what we expect to hear from the President in just moments as he gives a speech, which we will listen to. If you want to hear the President's remarks and listen to this without commentary, there is a stream at foxnews.com today. Here on the Will Cain Show, we'll be offering you commentary throughout the hour with Kurt Schlichter, Andy McCarthy, and Carol Markowitz. There's a lot to analyze. What to expect from the next 4 years. We're expecting 200 some odd executive orders within the first 24 hours of Donald Trump's presidency. We'll be watching immigration to see both what is done at the border and when we begin the process of deportations. Reports are that Border Patrol has already started to mass in several large American cities. There will be new policies through executive order on energy. There will be perhaps some pardons for the prisoners from 4 years ago of January 6th. Speaking of pardons, Joe Biden at the 11th hour issuing pardons for General Mark Milley, members of the January 6th committee like Liz Cheney, and Dr. Anthony Fauci. We'll be talking about that a little bit later with several attorneys, including Kurt Schlichter and Andy McCarthy. This, as we mentioned, promises to be a new golden age of America. And it's hard not to feel the positivity, the optimism in that room, outside of the rotunda, in the capital city of Washington, D.C. It comes with a fair amount of skepticism and perhaps cynicism for late MAGA converts like Zuckerberg and Bezos. I think it's going to be worthy of much analysis and attention going forward. What exactly will be the roles of so many that have proven to be Donald Trump's and the American people's, quite honestly, enemy over the last 4 years? Now today they find themselves within the inner circle. There are some who are not in attendance. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, posted an Instagram video last night suggesting she wouldn't be attending the inauguration of a, quote, rapist, with news of CNN's liability in a defamation suit and an ongoing suit against CBS News. It's fascinating to see what the role of defamation will serve in accountability for statements like that made from AOC. Michelle Obama notably missing as former presidents were introduced, Bill and Hillary Clinton, George and Laura Bush. It was quite notable that Barack Obama came in on his own. Why was that? Is it lend credence to the rumors of a rift between the Obamas, Barack and Michelle Obama? Is it an act of protest, the inauguration of Donald Trump? But it was hard not to recognize that moment as notable. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can see people gathered before a screen in other parts of the Capitol, not able to make their way into the rotunda to watch the inauguration of the president. What a moment. What a comeback. What a sense of optimism. What a golden age we sit at here in America. It's just hard to escape the enthusiasm, yes, of that room, but in small towns and cities across the heartland of America. It's inescapable. It's surreal, personally, to look into that room and see my friend, Pete Hegseth, to see so many people that I've gotten to know over the last several years, Vivek Ramaswamy, Mike Johnson, and other members of the cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., who now promise to stand at the side of Donald Trump in leading America. Just an absolutely incredible moment. What we expect to see. First, optimism. Let's take a look at this graph. This is a graph of the way the American public feels about this inauguration of Donald Trump. Over 60% are optimistic about the future. That's different than it was 8 years ago when Donald Trump was inaugurated as president, and much higher than it was when Joe Biden was inaugurated as president. Take a look at the comparison over the last, several decades of presidents and optimism when they came into office. As we mentioned, 60% for Donald Trump, 58% for Joe Biden. In 2017, 56% for Donald Trump. It is, I think, even compared to moments in the past when we've been on the doorstep of so much division, notable that there is so much optimism in the country. Take a look at this from last night, one of the galas celebrating Donald Trump. This is Trump dancing with the village people. Some of the parties over the last couple of days, people said this one will be put into the Library of Congress, hang it in the Louvre. This time he had a live performance from the village people. And there he is doing his iconic Trump dance, along with the Indian, the construction worker, and the cowboy of the village people. Among the 200 executive orders we're going to be watching is what happens with TikTok. The CEO of ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, in the stands there in the rotunda. Over the weekend, TikTok was suspended. There was a message put up that showed what role Donald Trump would play. And then, as TikTok came back on, a thank you. They posted, "Thanks for your patience and support. As a result of President Trump's efforts, TikTok is back in the United States. You can continue to create, share, and discover all the things you love on TikTok." What will the next 24 hours mean? What type of executive orders will Donald Trump issue when it comes to free speech and TikTok and energy and immigration? Now Donald Trump takes the podium as he's been inaugurated, the 47th president of the United States. Let's listen.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Simple premise, a simple ideology. America first.
Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we're watching fires still tragically burn. From weeks ago, without even a token of defense, they're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly.
What I find notable about this moment in the speech is he's acknowledging an optimistic future without forgetting the problems of yesterday, and the men that created those problems awkwardly sit next to him. Joe Biden with his hand over his head, talking about wealth disparities and talking about the inability to handle crises at home, all through the prism of America first, remembering what happened yesterday while moving optimistically into tomorrow. Back to Donald Trump.
America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
This speech. How wonderfully written this speech from President Trump.
Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day.
Simultaneously strong and unifying.
It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural, and very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states, and the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border.
standing ovation for first focusing on illegal immigration.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
Brace yourself. Cartels of Mexico.
And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices.
Let's take a quick break for a moment here on the Will Cain Show from the speech of Donald Trump. For uninterrupted coverage of that stream, there are live streams at foxnews.com, the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. It is the Will Cain Show, normally live every Monday through Thursday at noon. And so we will be providing commentary on that speech as we go along. It just so happens that today, at the exact time that the airing of our show, is also the airing of Donald Trump's inauguration, swearing in, and speech. I do want to bring in Kurt Schlichter. He is a trial lawyer. He's the author of Attack. He's a retired Army infantry colonel, and he is a senior columnist at townhall.com. Kurt, thanks so much for being with me on this important day. It is an awkward time for you and I to try to analyze something as it's happening in real time, but I hope that you're also listening to Donald Trump as we go along. You and I together will dip in and out of that speech, but your quick reaction of what you've heard so far.
I can't tell you how excited I am to have a real president again. As far as Joe Biden, I want him to just go away back to Delaware. He can watch his Matlock reruns. He can eat his mush. He can, chase squirrels. Just go away and give us back our country. I haven't felt this way, Will, since I was a little kid and Jimmy Carter left in disgrace. And Ronald Reagan came in, and it became 8 of the greatest years in American history, actually 12. It is. We are on the cusp of a new golden age. We really are, and you can feel it. This is America. We want to win. We want to succeed. We want to be glorious. That's what Donald Trump has tapped into, and we can do it. We haven't lost it. We're not a loser people. We're not the failures and half-steppers that the Democrats want. We're not people who need government handing us things. We don't need to be told what to do or bossed around. We're taking our country back. I couldn't be happier. I'm actually breaking my dry January tonight. I'm going to have a bottle of Cabernet and a delicious steak to celebrate my country coming back. And a little shout out, as an Army guy, I got a shout out to those Navy midshipmen singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Holy cow. Must be dusty in my house, Will, because I had a little water in my eyes.
Wonderful. What a wonderful time for you. What a wonderful time for America. Let's take a minute together to see where Donald Trump is right now in his speech at the Rotunda at the Capitol.
For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before. To restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government, my administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency.
Come back in here to the Will Cain Show, joined by Kurt Schlichter here of townhall.com. Kurt, I thought he hit a really interesting note that I don't think is on the surface level for me to say, simultaneously unifying as it is strong and looking back and demanding accountability for the last 4 years. He caged the optimism for tomorrow in the need for correction of yesterday. And I think that will be something that it sounds like he is promising to do. So let me talk about at least two of those. What do you think about the news that among his 200 executive orders here in the first 24 hours will be pardons for prisoners from January 6th, 2020?
I wrote about this in Town Hall last week. Every single J6 prisoner must be pardoned. Every single one, including ones accused of violence. The reason is that there is a two-tier justice system, and every single prosecution was fundamentally unfair. It was, every single prosecution.
Oh, we lost Kurt there for a moment. While we get Kurt back, though, we can listen in.
Engineer race and gender
Donald
into
Trump.
every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. This week, I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay.
What we hear, Kurt, now is some of that corrective action from the last 4 years. Whether or not it's the pardon of January 6th, the reinstatement of military members for refusal of the COVID vaccine, and a reposition of reality when it comes to trans ideology, the acknowledgement that there are two genders.
It is important to use power to correct wrongdoing. It's the right thing to do. The people who were victimized on January 6th, the people who were wrongly thrown out of our military, the people who have been brutalized by this bizarre gender insanity, that has to be accounted for. But we also, as a president and a leader, he also has to show that he's going to have the back of his people. He needs to go and use the power he was given justly and correctly and within the bounds of the Constitution to correct these problems. And it is gratifying to see these doing it. Before his first term, I think he was told there are a lot of guardrails, there are norms, you can't do this. No. The norm is you correct injustices. And that's what we expect him to do. That's what he's doing.
He said it as his first order of business addressing the southern border of the United States. There is some expectation, Kurt, that within hours after his inauguration, we could begin to see the process of deportation. He mentioned specifically criminal gang members. What do you hope and expect to see on the front of deportation?
Well, look, my feeling about deportation is if you are here illegally, you need to go home. Our Congress passed laws that were signed by the president. It is an attack on democracy to allow people to stay here in violation of the law. So every one of them needs to go home. I don't care if you call him a dreamer. I don't care what you call him. Get out. However, you've got to prioritize. Everybody can't go tomorrow. It is right and proper to prioritize criminals. It is also right and proper to encourage people to self-deport by making it tough to be here and to function here. And I think Donald Trump, with Tom Homan, is going to do all of those things. And I look forward to getting our immigration system back under control. And I like our immigration system. I married an immigrant who escaped from communist tyranny. So let's do it and do it right. But we have to uphold the law.
Let's listen back in together one more time to Donald Trump and where he is in this speech after his inauguration as president.
To the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy.
What a perfect illustration, this moment of the speech, Kurt, of the balance between American restoration, Mount McKinley, and American expansion, the Gulf of America.
I think it's great. I think this is about America reaching out for greatness and not being ashamed of our past. Okay, we need to rename this mountain in Alaska because, well, we can't possibly name it for a great character in American history. This is the same kind of mentality that tears down statues, that renames army bases, that tries to change our history to conform to some communist gobbledygook agenda from 2025. And that's over. We're done with that. America is a great country. We should be proud of it. We should love our history, and we should teach it honestly. And that's what we're going to do.
Kurt Schlichter, columnist at townhall.com. He's also the author of Attack. I appreciate you being on with me, analyzing a speech in real time after the inauguration of Donald Trump. Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks so much, and congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about the launch tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the Fox News channel, The Will Cain Show. Let's bring in now Fox News contributor. He's also a contributing editor at National Review. He's a former federal prosecutor, Fox News contributor. Andy McCarthy joins us on The Will Cain Show. Andy, thanks for being here. As I mentioned to Kurt, it's an awkward thing to analyze something in real time. It's not unlike being a football play-by-play broadcaster. Donald Trump is currently giving his speech, and we're asked to comment on that. For anyone watching now, you can get the full uninterrupted version, the full uninterrupted airing of Donald Trump's speech at foxnews.com and Fox News YouTube here, but as we analyze it on The Will Cain Show. Let's first, Andy, take a quick listen in to where Donald Trump is right now in the rotunda.
Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken.
Andy McCarthy here on the Will Cain Show. Andy, this speaks directly to my heart. This is about the spirit and identity of America, something I've tried to give voice to on numerous occasions, but who we are. It's so encouraging to hear someone not just give it voice, but I truly think that this administration has a chance to embody that spirit of America.
Well, it's certainly the right tone to start out with, Will. And, unabashed patriotism from Washington is something that's welcome. It's not something that we've heard much of. I don't even want to just say the last 4 years. I just think, we need a renewal of the American spirit, the can-do spirit of America that doesn't, that is proud of its achievements, that can objectify itself in a way that learns from the things that we've done wrong, proud of our history, that we've done a better job than a lot of the people who are critics of America. And I think it's the spirit that we have to tap into to go forward, but go forward with pride in what America is, with pride in our culture, with pride in our country's unparalleled achievements in the modern history, in the entire history of mankind. I think the problem that probably frustrates you as much as it frustrates me is that we've had an ethos, particularly in the academy, where you can't teach America's greatness and appreciate America's greatness if you're going to deal with the dark chapters in our history, which, because we're human, we have, just like everybody else does. The great thing about America is that we overcome those things. And if we can get back to that spirit, things will be much better.
Andy, I think President Trump is doing a remarkable job today in this speech of balancing the need for accountability for what happened yesterday with the optimism and unity of what is required for tomorrow. And I wouldn't have a complete conversation with you if I didn't focus in on some of what essentially happened, at least metaphorically, yesterday. Joe Biden, at the 11th hour, issued pardons for General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, members of the January 6th Select Committee, including Liz Cheney. As you look at these pardons, I'm particularly interested, of course, in the pardon for Dr. Anthony Fauci. It's preemptive. It leaves open the question, for what? Why does Dr. Anthony Fauci need a pardon? Of course, everyone watching and you and I together can speculate about what he needs, why he needs a pardon. But when you're sitting in that office and you're Joe Biden and you're signing that piece of paper, you have to at least consider, for what? Why does Anthony Fauci need a pardon?
Well, I must say, Will, that I thought the idea of preemptive pardons is a terrible idea. I don't think the president tripping over himself to say there's no guilt involved here, there's no culpability involved here. This is, just in case there's a problem with the next administration. The Supreme Court in 1915 in the Burdick case observed that the acceptance of a pardon was an essential part of the pardon process of getting clemency, because it recognized that by accepting a pardon, implicitly, you're admitting guilt. Now, I have to say I've never been overwhelmed by the legal reasoning of that, but I don't think there's any question about the public perception of it. The reason I say that I'm not overwhelmed by the legal reasoning of it, unlike 1915, you and I live in this modern age of politicized prosecutions, which has been as bad as I thought it was in the Obama years. The last 4 years has just been astonishing. And I don't think as a legal matter that it's unreasonable to say, I'm going to accept a pardon, not because I think I'm guilty, but because there's a punitive way that the process is now used. The problem is the people who we're talking about are the people who use the process in such a punitive way. And, having orchestrated that for 4 years, I think that we're allowed to infer, that Biden didn't, and the people around him, because who knows who's making the decisions in this administration anymore. But they did what they did precisely because they're practitioners of this punitive, politicized prosecution. And I must say, I find it rich that some of you mentioned Fauci. Some of the pardons are going to apparently the members of the January 6th committee. They had a hearing, one of their slickly produced hearings in which the topic of the hearing was the fact that members of Congress, following the Capitol riot, engaged in conversations with the White House about the possibility of pardons, which, by the way, Trump didn't issue. But their point in highlighting that at a hearing was to say if these guys were talking about pardons, they must be guilty of felonies. So I just think it's rich for President Biden in feeling that he had to do this at the same time, by the way, as right before he went out the door, issuing pardons for people in his family and his circle who were involved in the Biden family influence peddling business. It's interesting to me that all this comes together at once. Mm-hmm. But, these guys knew exactly what they were doing for 4 years.
If you're just joining us now from the live stream of President Trump's inauguration at the Rotunda, he has now concluded his remarks. You're watching the Will Cain Show. Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, National Review editor, Fox News contributor, is joining us here to analyze some of what we've seen, not just today, but also what has taken place over the previous 24 hours with the pardons from Joe Biden and what we expect in the next 24 hours, Andy. I want to ask you about two, because I think they present legal challenges. So I want to hear your thoughts. First, TikTok. There is some anticipation that Donald Trump will extend, I think news reports are about 90 days, the TikTok ban. That was a ban enacted by Congress. What power does Donald Trump have under executive orders to change the implementation of an act of Congress?
Well, he's got the raw power to grant the 90-day extension. It's a one-time extension. I don't think he can grant it faithful to the letter of the law, because as I read the law, you're supposed to have the idea behind this, Will, is that you need another 90 days to complete a complicated transaction that's already sort of rolling along, where you have like signed contracts and there's an actual concrete plan of transfer, and you simply can't get it done because of the complexity of all this, and you need another 90 days. I don't really see that we're in it. I'm obviously willing to sit back and say, I may not know all the details, and maybe we'll find out new details in the next 24 hours that there's more of a deal in place than I've been led to believe by reading the media up until now. But if Trump issues the 90-day waiver, there's really nothing short of congressional action that can stop him from doing that. And I don't think anybody's going to have any heartburn or any desire to go that route. But I do think where this could play out is in court. If there are legal actions, there'll be, some question about whether President Trump, dotted the I's and crossed the T's with respect to the 90-day extension.
Right. The other one I wanted to ask you about, Andy, is birthright citizenship. Reports are among the 200 executive orders Trump intends to end birthright citizenship. But it's my understanding, and that's why you're here, that is grounded in the Constitution. So how can that be affected by executive orders?
Well, I don't think the president can change birthright citizenship by executive order. I'm not certain it can't be done by statute. And I don't think the Constitution necessarily requires it. This is not a popular position, but my own reading of the 14th Amendment is that people who are born outside the United States owe the fidelity of citizenship to the places in which they were born. And I've always thought that just as if American parents give birth to a child overseas, our law recognizes that that child's an American, notwithstanding that they're not in the United States at the time of birth.
Right.
to me, the same logic should apply inside the United States. If you have people who are foreign nationals, who are not American citizens, I don't think that they should be able to, or their child should be able to claim American citizenship by nothing more than the physical fact of being born inside the United States. That's not the current understanding, obviously, of the 14th Amendment. But as President Trump has noted a number of times, we're like the only country in the world that has this crazy system, which actually encourages people to come to the United States illegally for the purpose of giving birth and anchoring themselves in our country outside of our laws. I think it's a crazy system. It's something that ought to be revisited, but I don't think it can be done by
How would that
executive
happen,
order.
Andy? Really quickly, how'd that happen? He passes an executive order. It's challenged. It makes its way through the court system. And we see if the Supreme Court still feels, this current version of the Supreme Court still feels the same way about birthright citizenship.
If it gets that far, Will, with these legal questions, there's always the procedural and the substantive, right? The question will first be whether the president has the power to do it before you even get to the substantive question.
Substance. Right. That will be a conversation I hope that you and I can continue together here on both versions of the Will Cain Show, here digital every day at noon and at the Fox News channel at 4 o'clock starting tomorrow. I could save it until I first see you on television.
That's great, by the way. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful.
Thank you. And I could use that broader audience to go ahead and do this and dunk on you. But because it's really originally a Friends of the Will Cain Show event, let's go ahead. Congratulations on second place in the Fantasy Football League of the Friends of the Will Cain Show League.
Yeah, well, I have to say, Will, if it hadn't been for my son, who is now a senior at U Chicago, I would not have been able to even come close to eating your dust as I did for in the final outcome.
Well, I was glad to see you there, even if I had to put you down there in the finals. Andy McCarthy, always great to see you on the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Will.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we have just concluded the remarks of President Donald Trump. Now, the 47th president of the United States, he's been inaugurated, sworn in, and given his speech about the vision of America. I think it was a very, very commendable speech of balancing a hopeful and optimistic vision of the future, ambitious in its goals, rooted in the American spirit of who we are and our identity, and still yet demanding accountability for not just the last 4 years, but of recent history in the United States. Let's talk about the themes and what we heard there with the host of the Carol Markowitz Show, also the co-host of Normally. She wrote Stolen Youth, How Radicals Are Erasing Innocence and Indoctrinating a Generation. She's a columnist at both the New York Post and at Fox News. Carol Markowitz on the Will Cain Show. Hey, Carol.
Hi, Will. Thanks so much for having me.
What did you think, Carol? You, of my three guests today, including the host of this show here, myself, got to listen in full to Donald Trump. We went in and out with our guests, analyzing it as we went, but you got to listen in full. What did you hear? What was your biggest takeaway today from Donald Trump?
I think it was what Americans really needed to hear from him. It sounded steady, calm, but very resolved and looking towards the future. I love the mentions of God, which is a little surprising. I never saw Donald Trump as a particularly religious man, but I think the near miss on him, the attempted assassination, has really changed him. And I think you could see it in his speech. He mentioned, again, God several times. He talked about the great hope of America and the way that we have moved away from that over the last few years. I think it's a real contrast to the angry, kind of bitter leadership we've seen from the Joe Biden administration in the last few years. And I'd love to see this continue into his presidency.
What do you think about the awkwardness inside that room? Donald Trump, yes, called for unity and talked about, I think, values that do unify America. But he also talked about problems that need to be rectified and for some, be held accountable. And many of those people, as he acknowledged, at least when it came to the LA wildfires, of people who had lost their homes, were in that room. People that caused a vision of America that needs to be rectified and perhaps in some ways held accountable were sitting in that rotunda.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about this last few hours of the Biden administration is that there's going to be so much less accountability because of his pardons. I think that what he did in the last few hours will be studied for generations. The preemptive pardons of people like Anthony Fauci, for example, we're never going to get to the bottom of what happened. And I hope we do anyway. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope that they, despite him being pardoned, for example, that the Trump administration is going to look into what happened with Anthony Fauci starting in 2014 as Biden pardoned him from that year. But you're right. There's other people in that room who also need to be kind of investigated, if not formally, then at least, by the media that I would love to show some curiosity. I need the Donald Trump administration to be forward looking, but I think in order to do that, we have to look back somewhat and see what went wrong in our path to this moment.
I agree. I want to look forward. I'm optimistic about the future, but I don't think you can do so based upon the false premises of the past. And there has to be some accountability for what took place over the last 4 years. With that, by the way, Carol, how should I feel? How do you feel today when you look into that room and you see who sat there behind Donald Trump? Some very recent MAGA converts, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Google. How do you feel about these new converts to MAGA?
Well, it's a major vibe shift, and I do enjoy that. I like, for example, the idea that Melania Trump is being dressed by Oscar de la Renta and everybody's celebrating that instead of trying to cancel him. I think that it's important to let people into the room, but doesn't mean that they need to be running the room. So the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, that's great that he came around and that Facebook is going to be less authoritarian under this president. But that doesn't mean to me that he should be setting policy. That when the tent gets too big, the people who were in the tent originally don't have their needs met. And I think that Donald Trump needs to focus on who's been with him since the beginning, who has been MAGA with him since the beginning. He needs the working class more than anybody else in this country, really needs direct help from this presidency. They need to be focused on. So the oligarchs, as Biden called them, and all of these billionaires and all of that, they have a large role to play, but it was the people, the American people, who elected Donald Trump this time and the last time. And I think that they need to be the priority.
I totally agree. This is a populist revolution. Donald Trump said today it was a revolution of common sense. So I think, we heard about an optimistic vision of the future when it comes to even American expansionism.
Yeah.
Greenland, the Gulf of America, the Panama Canal. Do you think you can or will expect a different version of Donald Trump than the one you saw from 2016 to 20? Do you think this will be a different kind of presidency than maybe even the left is expecting from Donald Trump?
Absolutely. I think that he learned a lot in his 4 years as president. He learned a lot in the 4 years since then. And I think that he sees a path much clearer than he did before. I think he understands the hurdles, for example. I don't think he understood all the people that would stand in his way and all the different ways that they would do that. I think he has a much clearer picture right now of how he gets to his kind of end game and where the problems are going to arise. This is a Donald Trump, again, who has his list of things that he wants to accomplish, some of them kind of far-fetched. I'm not sure why we need to make Canada the 51st state or why we need Greenland, but I'm willing to hear him out. But I think that he has a much clearer vision of what he wants America to be at the end of his presidency than he did the last time around. Last time he seemed kind of in a whack-a-mole mode where he was dealing with problems as they arose. Now he has a plan and a vision for himself and for the country.
Do you think it will be received with the same type of fervent resistance in the media and on the left?
Yes, but it won't be quite the same. I think it won't be as fervent. A lot of things have changed. Viewership at some of these other television stations has really decreased. And I think that they understand that they can't keep going with this Trump is Hitler thing that they've been doing. It just doesn't resonate anymore. I still think the media is going to go after him. But again, I think that he has a different viewpoint now. Look, like Donald Trump, I was a lifelong New Yorker, read the New York Times, even though, even when we hated it, he gets now that it's not quite the same as it used to be, that he can't actually be on the cover of the New York Times and have things go well for him. I think he's realized that a lot of people that he thought were not his friends, but certainly not his enemies, are actually his enemies. And I think that he has a different point of view this time where he won't fall for the same kind of traps anymore. I think he's got a real clear vision.
Finally, Carol, I think that you and I, perhaps, as we grew up, and we as Americans have lived through maybe almost a century of ideology. Mm-hmm. It was a century defined by political theory. History of man is not one of political theory. It wasn't driven by Karl Marx. It wasn't driven by Adam Smith. It wasn't driven by William F. Buckley, and it wasn't driven by Noam Chomsky. But for the last 100 years, we have seen essentially ideology, in some ways take the place of religion, but ideology drive American politics. I think that Donald Trump represents a departure from ideology. Do I think he is conservative by nature? I do, because I think he is common sense by nature. And conservatism is inherently tied, not inextricably, but inherently to some degree, tied to common sense. If he promises the revolution of common sense, if he promises the golden age, we know he's practical, we know he's transactional, we know he's a man of business. What do you think is the cohesive theme? I don't think it's traditional Republican. I don't think it's traditional conservatism. I don't know what the coherent theme, if one exists, for the next 4 years of Donald Trump.
It's very interesting that you say that. I totally agree with you about the ideology, especially in the last 4 years. We've been ruled by ideology, and it has replaced so many other things. I don't know that I see Donald Trump as a conservative. He does have some conservative impulses for sure. He's a moderate. And the thing is that while I'm a conservative, and I think I always want the more conservative candidate, I always want the more conservative president, I think this is actually a moment for a moderate. This is a moment for someone to bring our country together in a way that only a Donald Trump kind of person could. So while I think I'm to his right on a lot of things, like I think, for example, one of his impulses was to say that we should give green cards to all college graduates from foreign countries in the United States. And I was like, no. He walked that back. I think that he is able to learn from his mistakes, and I think that that's important. But I think it is actually a moderate moment, and I think he's made for this moment. Even though, again, I feel like I'm further to his right. It's not an ideological moment. We've had this ideological moment. It needs to be a practical moment. People have been hurting. People have been ignored, and Donald Trump is there to bring those people back into, if not the fold, then back into a better place in America.
All right, Carol Markowitz, New York Post, FoxNews.com, here on The Will Cain Show. Always great to see you, Carol. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Will.
If I could offer up what my answer is to my own question on what is the cohesive vision moving forward for the next 4 years, I think Donald Trump laid it out clearly, and I actually think he laid it out simply with basically the first line of his speech today after being inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States. He will view every issue through the lens of America first. The ideology, the theme, the cohesive thread, we hope, through which runs every decision, every direction for Donald Trump is what first serves America. That's going to do it for us today here on The Will Cain Show. It's been a very special episode. We understand if you tuned in for the full, unedited, and uninterrupted version of Donald Trump, this is our normal broadcasting time, so we did our best to bring you some of that today, along with some of our commentary and understanding of The Will Cain Show. As is always the case, this show is a process and an evolution and a conversation with you and me, and it's only going to grow starting tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 Central on the Fox News channel. Tonight, Ohio State takes on Notre Dame in the national championship game. We'll have reaction tomorrow here at noon at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. I'll see you next time on The Will Cain Show.